What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Bronx Attorney Broadcast. I'm your host, Will Ferrero. On today's episode, we have Michelle Stern. Michelle is the Executive Director of the New York State Academy of Trial Lawyers, and the Academy is responsible for putting on all sorts of amazing CLEs and networking events for its members, which reminds me, I'm late on my CLE requirements. I gotta go get them done, so please enjoy the episode. Hey, Michelle, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing awesome.
Thanks for taking the time to chat with me a little bit about what you do.
My pleasure.
Can you just introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Michelle Stern. I'm the executive director of the New York State Academy of Trial Lawyers. We are the largest statewide trial lawyer bar in the nation.
Wow, in the nation. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so what does the Trial Lawyers Academy do exactly?
So, we're a bar association. So like most bars, we're, a professional organization for lawyers. We like to run social events and get our lawyer folks together, often with judges and other important members of the legal community. So part of it's social and networking. We are huge CLE providers at this point. We might be one of the biggest CLE providers in the entire state of New York. We're almost at 300 CLEs since the start of the pandemic, and they average 1,000 attendees. So we've done hundreds of thousands of attendees since the start of the pandemic. And so, we do a lot of CLEing. We also do political work. Right now, we are very focused on the Grieving Families Act, trying to update New York State's wrongful death law. But we are always more broadly striving to improve and expand and preserve New York's civil justice system. So, and we work with a lot of sponsors and vendors. So those are sort of the major areas of things that the Academy does, sort of networking between members, CLE programming, and other kinds of special events, and then our political work.
Did I see that the Academy won like CLE Provider of the Year for what was the parameters of that?
Oh yeah, we're the number one. Yes, we are, according to the New York Law Journal's annual survey that was just released in September, we are the number one CLE provider in the state of New York, and also the number one online CLE provider in the state of New York. So go us.
And if any non-lawyers somehow find their way to the video, what's a CLE?
Continuing legal education. I know I use that lingo all the time. Yeah.
I know a lot of people dread getting their CLEs done, but I've kind of just been, clicking on things that interest me, and it's been whenever it rolls around that I have to submit it, I'm like already done. So and I guess that's thanks to the Academy, because I watch a lot of their CLEs.
Well, we try to keep the programs interesting. We try to come up with very interesting titles and interesting speakers on topics that are current. We just did a CLE with the new chief judge, with Judge Rowan Wilson.
Very exciting.
So fun. It was the most nervous I have ever been presenting a CLE. After almost 300 programs, I kind of no longer get nervous about online speaking, but I was super nervous because it's the chief judge. And
right.
I'm a very big fan of his. So it was great. And he was amazing. And it was a great program. But we try to bring cool, interesting stuff to the Zoom stage so that your CLEs don't have to be boring. You should be able to pick up info and run with it.
Yeah. And so if people are listening to, the CLEs, you're always the one that is announcing the codes, right?
Yeah. Now the codes are poll questions, but yes, that's my main role. Is I'm like the opening act and hostess and logistical support throughout. I try to avoid speaking about content because I really only play a lawyer on Zoom. So
gotcha. So it's, aside from reading the codes, which has now been taken away from you, what does the executive director do?
Oh God, well, that's a great question. So I supervise all of the programming. I do most of the CLE planning, sort of creation
Mhm.
and hosting. Once the CLE is over, I kind of hand it off to my staff to take care of the details and the follow-up and logistics, which is fun for considering the volume that we're now doing. I do a lot of overseeing of the political stuff. So I do a lot of meeting with our PAC chairs and our political team and our lobbyists to keep those things on track. I'm a go-between for the nearly 5,500 members of the
Wow.
organization. So members will need another member. You'll call and say like, hey, somebody I know needs a car accident attorney in
Mhm.
Syracuse. Do you know somebody? And I have this crazy network now of
Right.
just people that I know through the academy. So there's a lot of that. um it's a lot of membership, trying to get folks to join all the time. We're always trying to grow and get more members to join. I'm constantly dealing with our board of directors, and we have an associate board of directors.
Mm.
So you can talk more about that, but I'm often meeting with our various boards and trying to implement new things. We're working on some listserv creation now, and our 20th anniversary is coming up very soon. So I have a couple committees working on planning for our big soiree.
Yeah.
Soirees, we're actually going to have multiple parties to celebrate,
Mhm.
because why have one party when you can have two parties?
Well, it's a big state, and people aren't going to travel, across the White Plains border, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It's tricky.
So when when I was trying to do a little bit of research on you to figure out what kind of questions I was going to ask,
Uh-oh.
the quote that kept coming up is that you wanted to be a lawyer with no clients. So
Yes.
when did that come about? That thought?
It used to be a joke, right? Like I used to say like, oh, I'm this executive director, and people would be like, what does that mean? And I would say I'm just this brilliant genius who figured out how to be a lawyer with zero clients, right? I have no clients. And now it's, almost 20 years later, and I have 5,500 lawyers and
Right.
judges. And I think back and I'm like, I could have just had like whatever 100 normal people, clients,
Right.
like
Right.
regular clients. I don't know why I was so afraid of
Right.
clients. And now I have 5,500. Every single one of them is crazy,
Yeah.
lawyers and
That's a
judges.
lot of opinions to have to hear.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. I was
What,
young and naive.
was the academy your first job out of law school?
It was. Yeah. It was right after I graduated law school. Before I worked at the academy, I was involved in NYPIRG, the New York Public Interest Research Group,
Mm.
and they do a lot of civil justice related work. So there's some overlap in people and network people.
Mm.
And that's how I found out about the academy. They needed an executive director. And I was like a weirdo who went to law school without really wanting to be a lawyer and wanted to do like nonprofit government,
Right. Right.
organizing kind of stuff. So it was a really good fit for me, because I was trying to leave law school and not, waste my legal education. And so it was a nice mix for me, where I like still needed to be a lawyer. It was still in the
Right.
legal world.
Mhm.
I still had to talk the legal lingo.
Mhm.
But no clients, just lawyers.
And so when you first started, there was only like 100 people in the academy, right? So
Yeah, it
how did
was.
you grow it to
So
5,500?
it's definitely not all my credit. The
Uh-huh.
the academy had some really amazing founders and some core members that have been with us from the beginning, and they had a vision before I was a kid in law school, barely knew what a bar association was when they founded the academy, but they founded the academy with the idea that they could do it better, that they could build a bar association that really created something for the members
Mhm.
that was obvious, right? They had this sort of attitude that bars were taking too much from their members and not giving enough back.
Uh-huh.
And their attitude was, we're going to do free CLE. There's no reason that you should be paying for that. The bar should give it to you.
Right.
So the free CLE was our biggest platform for membership, even pre-pandemic. And we were, trucking along, building, growing. And then the pandemic hit, and I will admit there was definitely a moment where I was like, oh, we were so close to hitting 3,000 members. Oh, no. And we kind of took a deep breath for the month of March 2020, and we ran our very first Zoom CLE in the very beginning of April 2020. So we were one of the first to jump on to Zoom and to start running programming on Zoom. And even that first program had hundreds of people at it. And I was sort of like, oh boy, this is going to be a thing. And then, it just sort of exploded from there, running really good programming, having great speakers, having in the beginning, it was a place just for people to hang out. Like it was.
Oh, yeah.
Folks in that, lawyers were bored, courts were closed. There was a limit of what you could do in the beginning, right? Everybody was just sort of sitting at home and freaking out. And one of the few things that you could actually accomplish while you were sitting around not doing any cases was I could tick off my CLE credits. There's 24 hours worth of work that I could get done right away and feel good about having done something. So I think the trick was sort of capturing folks in those first 24 hours, and they were introduced to the Academy. They became part of the Academy's family. They decided that getting CLEs from us was fun and easy and enjoyable and not necessarily torturous and boring. So, then it grew pretty dramatically from there. Then instead of never hitting 3,000, we're now at 5,500.
Yeah,
so
wow.
It really shot off. It was not, who could have expected?
You were doing the CLEs in person before?
Yeah, we were running CLEs in person. We had done a few things online, but we had almost never run it live online. We had done some pre-recorded stuff. But yeah, we were running most of the time. I would get a program and then I would run the same program in at least 6 cities. So we'd take it sort of the show on the road, right? It'd be Will and Michelle or in Albany, then Syracuse, then Rochester, then Buffalo, then Manhattan, then Long Island.
On the CLE tour.
Yeah, exactly. So I did a lot of CLE touring before shifting to Zoom. And I don't know, while there are many places where Zoom education is a far cry from in-person, I actually think that CLE education, that legal education, it's really helpful. Lawyers don't have to schlep anywhere. You can do it while you're at your desk. You can be monitoring other stuff while you're still watching and paying attention to what's going on in the Zoom screen. I mean, even when lawyers are doing it in person, they're still, doing the wordle on their phone. Everybody's multitasking. So it makes it a little bit more palatable and a little more doable, a little easier. And lawyers like it. It's nice to be able to talk to 1,000 lawyers at once and to not have to roadshow the whole state to be able to get to everybody in a convenient way. So I don't know. It's certainly been a silver lining of the pandemic for us. I think a lot of the technology leaps have been a silver lining for the legal community in general. And that's definitely true for the Academy.
And how are you putting together this great content? Are you having to approach attorneys to be like, oh, you're in this practice area. We want something that, we think that you can give a good presentation on, or are people coming to you, or both?
It's a little bit of everything. So some of our programming has been around since pre-pandemic. So for example, we just finished our annual update series. It was our 20th year of doing that series. The series has morphed over time. It used to be an all-day, in-person, sit in a conference room from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. kind of thing with a revolving door of presenters. Now it's on Zoom in little chunks, and you can sort of catch it as you want to, because sitting on Zoom for 8 hours in a row makes anybody want to shoot themselves. So that's not a good plan. So the format has changed, but that program has existed, and many of those presenters have been presenting for 20 years.
Wow.
So some of our programming is like, I'm just lucky and it's baked in, right? Like some of our presenters are just CLE machines, like Professor Mike Hutter. He does 2 annual update topics and our CPLR update every year. He just like, I don't know how he does it. He just magically churns out CLE content like a robot, and it's amazing. And he's one of our best presenters. People just love Professor Hutter. So we're very lucky. And then there's a lot of programming that we go after. So some of it is based on the types of credits. So for example, there's a new cybersecurity category of credit that's been created by the CLE board that all attorneys, not brand new attorneys, all after your first 2 years, you need to do cybersecurity credits. So that's something we've sort of been rushing to catch up to and make sure we're providing. Diversity credits, same kind of thing. It's been around for a while. We try to meet that need with some really interesting programming. We have one coming up called Triggering Snowflakes, Diversity in the Legal Profession. I like a enticing title.
I'm sure everyone's going to have an opinion before they even go into that.
That's kind of the point, right? So we try to meet those needs. Ethics credits, we try to I will seek out programming in some different areas. So sometimes we'll go find people. So AI is a hot topic right now. I've gone to find national speakers, and I just do some research, look to see who's presenting for other folks that I trust and know, and search the network to see who might be good at different topics. And then some of it is just folks come to me. Like there's a CLE form on our website where you can fill out like, hey, I want to present. This is what I want to present on. We do try really hard to make sure all of our presentation faculties have some diversity. I am we're way past the times of old white dude, old white dude, old white dude, old white dude, like nothing but a parade of CLE old white dudes.
Try to get some different perspectives.
A lot of different perspectives. And it's not just racial diversity, it's gender diversity, it's race, it's geographic diversity, it's type of practice diversity. So I try to not have just a plaintiff. If I have just a plaintiff, I get complaints from the defense side. So I really do try to mix up my faculty in all possible ways so that folks are getting, a really good perspective on whatever the topic is. We're not always able to do that, but I try. And sometimes it does just drop in my lap. A very recent example, I was in Rochester. I needed office space to run a program out of. I just happened to be at one of my former board members' offices in Rochester. I ended up sort of walking around the office just to see who's around and say hi. One of her partners was there. I ended up talking to him for 5 minutes, and he's like, oh, I just wrote a book. It's about epidemiology and the law. I was like, oh, cool, sign my book. Also, we should do a CLE on this. Sometimes it just literally, I wasn't walking around the office looking for CLE content, but the dude just wrote a book. I was like, all right, well, if you wrote a book, then clearly you could talk about this for at least 50 minutes. So you just have to open your eyes to it. And they just have been coming. Now they're coming all the time. We are currently booking, it's almost November. We're currently booking February and March programming. So I'm staying 3 to 4 months ahead. We don't want to be too far ahead because the law changes so fast that if I get too far ahead, then people want to do stuff and I don't have enough flexibility in the schedule. So I try to not be too crazy.
And why should people, attorneys, be CLE presenters?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, you get triple credit. Okay. So in addition to just your single credit, you got to rack up your credits. It's a great way to get your name out there, and it's a great way to get referrals, right? So if you're, let's say you're up there talking to 1,000 people about jury selection, right? They're going to see you rocking it on jury selection. And they might be like, oh, case coming up. Maybe I'll throw that. Maybe I'll still see if Will wants to be. So for sure, it's just sort of getting your name out there, presenting, being an expert, being seen as an expert on your topic. Plus it's fun. You get to like hang out with me on a Zoom for an hour. What's be more fun than that?
Do you ever get any feedback from presenters like, oh, I gave that presentation on such and like my phone's been ringing off the hook?
Yeah. Oh, totally. We definitely get presenters hear from folks. They often hear from folks they haven't heard it in forever, right? Like they'll get calls after the fact, like from some random person they went to law school with that was like, I saw that meeting and I didn't know you existed anymore.
Right,
So
right.
it can, re-engage you with folks you haven't seen in a while. But for sure, it's 1,000 or so people every time. So that's a lot of eyeballs. And it's, New York's legal community is huge, but it's not that huge. Somebody's going to be on there that's going to notice you if you're out there with 1,000 folks.
Yeah, and especially if you can get good at something that's either annoying or difficult that nobody else wants to do, and that'd be a great way to get a lot of referrals.
Absolutely.
And so, how do you feel about the other bar associations? Are you competitors, or is there gang fights in the courthouse when you run into somebody from one of the other ones?
There are between some bars, but not the Academy. We're not that kind of bar. I'm a very big believer in a rising tide floats all boats, right? Like we work with tons and tons of other bar associations, especially the bars that are a little bit smaller and don't have staff or the resources we do. We like to run Zoom CLEs with other bars all the time because there's smaller bars out there that just don't have a 3,000 seat Zoom account. They just can't do a Zoom CLE like that, but they have the perfect content. They have the perfect presenter. They really have that like specific knowledge or know-how. And we want to help bring that information to our members just as much as we want to help bring that message to their members. So we work with lots of regional bars. We have a couple bars, a couple CLEs coming up with the Albany County Bar Association. We have a couple coming up with the Caribbean American Lawyers Association, CALA. They're doing a domestic violence one with us that's about the migrant, like prosecuting domestic violence cases in a migrant crisis, which is going to be fascinating. So yeah, I'm kind of a bar junkie. I'm members of a whole bunch of different bar associations. And I think I'm a big, the more the merrier kind of fan. You can't be a member of enough bars. It's just going to benefit you. They're all really great. They're all doing really good work. They're all trying to like help the legal community in their own ways. They're all worth the networking. So if you don't vibe with the Academy, find a different one. Like I mean, I'm not Puerto Rican, but I'm a member of the Puerto Rican bar. I'm a member of the women's bar. I'm a member of the Jewish lawyers. Like you join whatever speaks to you.
Yeah, totally. What would you say that you're proudest of in your career with the Academy?
Last week's CLE with Judge Wilson was totally a highlight.
That was the pinnacle, and it was last week?
That was a big moment. I really was very excited. After that CLE was, I was quoted in the front page of the New York Law Journal above the folds.
Okay.
On the day after the CLE, and then there was another article about it the day after that. So 2 days in a row above the folds, front page of the Law Journal was pretty high quality.
Yeah, that's nice.
The Academy has sort of taken on, and I have taken on the role of running the Court of Appeals judicial screening. So all of the candidates that go through the process of potentially sitting on the Court of Appeals go through this gauntlet of bar association judicial screenings. There are 13 some odd bars that now screen, and I coordinate that for the Academy and all these other bars. So that's kind of huge. I'm really proud of that work. Plus the biggest perk of that is that I get to know all the Court of Appeals judges, which is a really nice, fun, kind of cool thing.
Yeah, of course.
But just the growth, like the membership growth is kind of crazy. When the Academy was founded and when I started, we had 100 members. Nobody really thought we would be at 5,500. That was not something that we ever envisioned. CLEs with we've had some that had 3,000 people on it. Like that's crazy. I never thought that would happen. those are moments that I'm kind of proud of. I'm really proud that we finally got the Grieving Families Act passed through the
Hmm.
legislature. I now would really like to get it signed into law.
Yeah,
Once that happens, that will by far
that'll be huge for
that
sure.
will by far supersede any prior accomplishment. If we can actually get the bill signed into law, that will be such an incredible, massive change for so many people and so important that that will be it. When
Right.
that happens, I'm waiting for that to be my answer.
I'm sure you'll get it done, and I'm rooting for you hard as a PI attorney. So,
Yeah.
what are we looking forward to in 2024? What's the big stuff that the Academy is going to be doing?
So it is our 20th anniversary year, which is kind of exciting and crazy. So we're going to have two very big parties to celebrate, one upstate, one downstate. We were founded in Syracuse, and our incoming president is from Syracuse.
Mm.
So our first party will be at the end of May in Syracuse, New York. And then we're going to do a downstate party in June in probably in New York City, specifically where to be determined. So as far as networking shindigs, look for that. God willing and governor willing, we will be celebrating the Grieving Families Act
Okay.
having been signed into law in like January-ish, end of this year or beginning of next, hopefully. And then a million more CLEs. We have some plans for, we're working on plans now for what I like to call the Academy 2.0. Now that we are 5,000 plus members strong, there's some organizational kind of segmenting that we need to do to make sure that we still maintain our feel and that we're still sort of a small community. So we have some new member benefits we want to roll out, including
Interesting.
some designated listservs
Mhm.
and some new ways to communicate within sections of the Academy, because we're kind of big enough now that we can do some committee splits and related work. So we're working on those kind of exciting things. I'm trying to think if I have any like incredibly exciting CLEs on the forefront. I mean, the Rowan Wilson thing, just I'm still like tickled from the Rowan
Mhm.
CLE. I'm sure I'll come back to Earth eventually. But yeah, that's all I can think of at the moment.
All right. And so what advice would you have for a young attorney who obviously joins the academy? How do they maximize the benefit that they're going to get? How's the best way to get involved?
Oh, that's a great question. So for sure, join, right? Like that's step one. Come to CLEs and participate. So the CLEs almost always have Q&As afterwards, and that's an extremely great resource, especially for young attorneys. You can pop your questions right in there and get your answers like instantaneously answered by a pro.
Hmm.
Nothing beats that. So like take advantage of it and do it. There's also all these different committees to join, right? So you can, if you want a party plan, you can get engaged on our 20th anniversary committee. You can always fundraise. You can help write publications. You can present CLEs. So there's all these sort of different areas. So if you're like I like to be in front of people, I like to talk a lot, which is true for a lot, but not all trial lawyers. You can certainly pick a topic and present a CLE. Or if you're more of the, I prefer to be behind the scenes, there's certainly different kinds of writing projects. There's all sorts of political stuff, lobbying, fundraising, going to political events. So there's lots of different ways. You can always just like email me and have a phone call with me and be like, hey, I just joined. I want to do some stuff. What do I do?
For sure. I think that's great advice. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me tonight and giving me and everybody else such a good background of the academy. And hopefully we'll get a lot more members and we'll get the Grieving Families Act passed.
Yeah, totally.
All
Thanks,
right.
Will, for having me.
Take
And
care.
I have to give a plug for the website. Folks
Oh,
can
for
go to
sure.
trialacademy.org to find out more or to join or to sign up for any of the upcoming programs.
All right. Take care.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Will.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bronx Attorney Broadcast. Please like, review, and subscribe so we can help the channel continue to grow. And if you're interested in connecting with any of the guests, please let me know, and I'd be happy to make the introduction.